there any shots that you weren't thinking you were going to get that you were able to achieve?
In the Arctic, or just for the whole movie?
And the whole movie.
When you make up a list as a TV series director, I do a shot list. Some of you may have seen them in like the 200th book and stuff. These they're not. I am very irreverent in them because generally I'm the only one that looks at them, or the people that sort of I hand them to. Anybody that's ever read my shot lists know that they're very irreverent, and they're 20 pages long and things like this. But it lists off every shot I want to do for the show. If you knew how many shots didn't make it into some of your favorite shows, some of your favorite episodes, I save all those. I have all my old shot lists and old scripts, and the scripts themselves actually have little diagrams on them of how I'm going to shoot a scene and things like this. And for people who are real fans of the show, if you ever saw those things, you'd go, wow, if you did this shot, it would have been amazing. Well, that's what it's all about in television. It's compromising your shots. It's compromising what you can do because of time, because of, it starts to rain, because of all that kind of stuff. There's no slop over. There's no let's take a couple more days to do it. With the movie, even though we were moving at an amazingly rapid pace, because Brad was there, I was able to get the shots I really wanted to. There was one shot, the hardest shot, the shot we spent the longest waiting for, other than the submarine shots in the north, was one that is a duplication shot that we had to do. And it was just because one piece of equipment didn't work. And so we sat around for like 3 hours. And 3 hours on the schedule we were on is 4 shots. So there's those kind of compromises that you make, and there are shots that you have in your head that after the number of years that I've been directing Stargate, I know what I can and can't get, and so it's become much more precise science for me. But still, when you go into something, you dream shots that just you're never going to get because you don't have the time. The equipment isn't working the way you want it to, or you have to just give it up because you've got a producer with a hammer standing on top of your head.
Yeah, keeping you realistic.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
You are now 4.5 hours overtime. Do you know how much that costs?
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Well, I'm sending the crane home. There goes that great shot. So,
crap. Does that happen a lot?
In television, it happens more because you are on a very fixed budget, and there's not a lot of wiggle room. But you know what? As I said, with the experience that I've had on Stargate, and I know how fast the crew moves. I know how fast the actors can move. I know what we can get, and unless there's something really unexpected that comes up, I can pretty much get my shot list in a day.
Wow, that's impressive. So have you seen the completed film? Is it all done?
Oh, have I? I sat in what's called a layback when we put the music on, and Joel Goldsmith went crazy.
He's insane.
Yeah.
I know.
I actually called him and left a message saying, with his assistant saying, tell Joel I love him. Joel calls me back and leaves a message for me. I love you too, man. But he's amazing. And Brad went down. I couldn't go down, unfortunately, because I had to be in England for Sanctuary. But Brad went down and into Seattle and sat with the orchestra and sat with Joel and went through the music. And it was remarkable. This is what happened. We went into the layback and we sat there. Brad was over on this side. He'd seen it already. He'd heard the music already. I hadn't. So I'm sitting there looking at it in this beautiful high-definition monitor. And I had only ever seen low-res versions of the movie because we're editing it on a lower res. I'm sitting there and I'm watching it, and this is my expression. And I keep hitting Brad. I keep hitting him in the arm.
Can you believe that?
Oh, man. And I get teary-eyed, and I get, oh, man, I can't believe, that's amazing. That's incredible. So, and I mean, hearing it, and this is a good thing about it coming out on DVD first instead of TV. You can put it into a good system, you can turn it up loud, and you can hear it the way it's supposed to be heard. And I love that. Because normally with a TV show, you know that people are going to miss about a third of what there is orally. You're just not going to hear the sound that's actually there. So,
what do you think about the story compared to some of the other stuff that you've done for Stargate?
The story is kind of a cool romp, and I think that there's the easiest way for me to tell you this is to describe the scenes that I usually like in a show are the ones that just propel us into something. I just grab you in the back, or you're standing there and they just go poof and hit you in the back. Those are the scenes I usually like. I've done, like 70 shows where I read the script first, and almost every time there's a scene in it that surprises me. But I read it and I go through it, and it's a scene I just read, and it's exposition, and I flip through it. And then when we get there on the day, the actors really surprise me because they just bring something to it that wasn't there when I read it. And that becomes my favorite scene, and they're often just short exposition scenes. And they're not the sort of hit you in the back kind of things. They're just ones where suddenly everybody's magic sort of comes together in it.
They brought it to life.
Yeah, and in Continuum, there are two scenes which I knew were going to be good, but when I actually read them, I sort of flipped past them. It was, I know this explanation, I know how we're going to get there. And you sort of flip past them and you get to the other end of it, and then there's like another hit in the back kind of scene. It's like, oh, great, they get to this. One of them is a scene in a hangar with Michael, Amanda, Ben, and Bo. You'll see it when you get to it. You'll know which one it is. And it was one of those scenes where I'm sort of whipping through the pages and I'm thinking, when's the next explosion going to happen? I'm reading it and thinking, this is going to be this good, so this is going to be good, so I'm going to do this, but I'm going to cover it like this. And as I watched the scene rehearsed, I looked at Brad and said, I need another camera. He goes, why? I said, I don't want to miss this. I don't want to miss what's going on. I'm going to order up another camera right now. We brought another camera in that day, and I shot more film on that scene than I did for half the movie. Because I really wanted to cover it in a certain way. I wanted to cover it so that in the edit suite, we would be able to put together the scene I'd seen rehearsed. And it was magic. All four of our characters sat there. And I mean, even now, you guys can attest this, you see these goosebumps. It's because I'm thinking about that, the way that the scene came off. And it's an integral scene to what's going on in the movie. And it's not a page past kind of scene. It is the brilliance of what Brad Wright can do when he has a little bit of time to write these things. Not that he's not brilliant all the time, but when there's the time, months to be able to write something like this, he puts so much into that scene, and you sit there watching it and you go, that's a really dense scene. And then there's a montage that happens just before that, which was really, it was Brad Wright's idea to do what he does, which is the sort of floating motion. So we've got all three characters on the screen at the same time, all of them talking at the same time. They're all giving a primer on what the Stargate and what the SGC is all about. To anybody that doesn't know that, but they're all talking at the same time. And it's just, if you listen to each individual one, you want to go back and play them again and again and again because you want to hear what each of them is saying. And Brad Rhines, when he put it together in the edit suite, he walked in, and what you see there is virtually what Brad and I saw he had done in his editor's copy. It was like, whoa, that's another really powerful scene. So for me, what it is the smaller exposition scenes sometimes have that hit in the back after I see it done. So it's kind of cool.
You say that script isn't good unless there's like an explosion every 10 seconds or so, like especially in the bigger like opening episodes and ending episodes, but it really is the character moments between the show.
It is. I mean, this is an action adventure. An action adventure is action and adventure.
Yeah.
But you know what? Truthfully, having done like a million shots where things are blowing up, they're cool, and they're what you look forward to in your day. But honestly, I've done some Atlantises in the last little while where it's just people stuck talking, and they're so much fun to do because it's a product drama that you get to play out, and harder to shoot because there's not a lot of angles, so you have to really think about how to do it.
You've been doing the show for so long now. Which of your episodes do you feel most withstand the test of time? Which are you most proud of?
I get asked this a lot when people sort of look at the volume of work, and it's a very hard question for me to answer. I'd rather sort of say, in this category, this is the ones that I like. In this category, these are the ones that I like. In this category, these are the ones that I like. Because truthfully, I mean, the evolution that's happened with me in my directing skill has skill in quotation marks. And the evolution that's happened to me as a director has really made a difference in how I like the shows. Because I look at some of the old shows, and I go, ooh,
how did I get away with that?
I can't believe I did that. But you know what? One of my favorite shows is still Solitudes.
Yeah.
Solitudes, Small Victories. You know, these are shows that I can watch over and over again and look past the directing and think, those are my favorite shows. You know, things like Grace Under Pressure. Was another one of my favorites, you know, where it was just David and Amanda.
He was brilliant.
And it's
Amanda,
just the ones that I actually have to take my brain and go like, you know, pull it out and do this with. When I'm actually thinking about not just how to make it through the day and how to tell the story the best, but what can I add to this story to make it sort of move it forward in a way that becomes, you know, that becomes a more round, full story. But I mean, there's the Lost Cities. There's and I love doing those kind of things. Rising was a favorite of mine. The Storm, The Eye. You know, when those are Atlantises, and then you go back into, you know, some of the Stargates where you start thinking about, okay, you know, the Siege. Sorry, that's Atlantis. But when you start thinking about, I actually just thought Siege was a really Siege 1, 2, and 3. I really liked it. But go back into Stargates and start thinking about Into the Fire, you know, and things like that, where they were supposed to be this big. Into the Fire was not supposed to be a huge show, and it suddenly became this massive thing. And there's a lot of them that I really like. So it's hard unless we sort of are saying, what's your favorite Richard Dean Anderson show, or what's your favorite, you know, Tilk's episode. I loved Avatar. I had such a good time with Avatar. You know, so I can tell you when you talk about it on those categories, which are my favorites, but it's hard to say sort of overall favorite for anything.
Mm-hmm. What do you think are going to be some of your favorite Sanctuary episodes? Now these are on. I mean, they're all you, right?
Sanctuary is a different animal because it started, you know, because the germ for it started down here, and we've sort of built it up together, Amanda and Damien and I. And Sam Egan now is a part of that too. And so there's sort of four of us that will sit in here and start, you know, battling it out about what the world is going to be. And that's the coolest part about creating something is that you're actually talking about what the world is, what the rules are, you know? Mm-hmm. I just sat in here one day and said, no magic. Yeah. We don't have any magic.
Yeah.
And everybody sort of fought that and you know, came around to the point where it's, you know, you have to have rules like that.
Yeah.
You know? It's like, you know, when you start looking at some of the things that I know, you know, Brad and Robert would, and Paul and Joe would love to not be part of the mythology of Stargate. And you learn, you know, no, don't ever shoot anybody 3 times with a Zadnikatel, okay?
Yeah.
That's got to go out.
Yeah.
You know, just you know, beaming technology, which is sort of changes the way that your whole mythology has to move. You know, as soon as you inject something like that in, now you got to write around it. You know,
the chips that they always have to deactivate the chips, or you have to pull your chip out so that they can't find you and beam you out.
You know, it's just there's so many weird things that you learn, and in a series like that you watch happening around you, and you're going, oh, this isn't a good idea. And then later on, somebody would come and say, that just wasn't a good idea. Or then there's the other part. I mean, I shouldn't say it like that because there's a million good ideas that come up for that. So what we're doing in here right now is trying to forecast and see if we do this, then what happens there? And you make characters from scratch, you know, and you suddenly, there's a character there that you know is going to live with you for the next 5 years, and you're going, or 10 years. You know, you're sitting there hoping that what the powers that you imbue in that character right now are going to be the powers that, you know, keep that person you know, alive and not make you write yourself into a corner sometimes with it. So it's fascinating. I love it. I love doing it. There's a whole bunch of other junk that happens right now with you know, we don't have a studio. We are our own studio, and that's don't ever do that. You know, really, I'm telling people that now. It's just, it is so much grief trying to make this thing happen that has nothing to do with creating a television show.
Yeah.
It just has to do with, you know, the business of TV. And it's just, for somebody that sort of tends to like a paintbrush and an easel, it's not fun. But it's necessary, and I'm glad I'm doing it. And I'm not glad right now. I will be glad.
The fun will outweigh it. Once the foundation is, then we can get to work.
Yeah.
Man. How have you grown as a producer now coming over here? More responsibility, smaller team.
You know what? What's interesting is that there's such a machine over at Stargate,
Yeah.
where you just depend on John Smith to be able to do things. You just depend on John Lennox to do things. You just depend on the executive producers to do things that you don't have to do. And there's this whole idea of the fact that you are shielded from the buffeting, so that you are allowed to direct, so that you're allowed to act. And here, Amanda and I, who have sort of gone through, 12 years together of that shielded part of it, are now exposed to the hideous underbelly of this thing and going, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
And you look at John Smith and John Lennox and Robert Cooper and Brad Wright and Paul and Joe, and you sit there and going, that's what they've had to deal with, And truthfully, what's interesting to me is that the network has been really good to us.
Yeah.
I'm waiting for the day when they turn around and get really angry at us for something we've done and thinking, I don't have there's no buffer now. I have to take it in the face and stand up in the wind. So that's how I've grown, is that I know now a lot more about what I didn't know for the past 12 years about how I was shielded. And we'll do it to anybody I can. We'll shield them, because nobody should have to deal with all that junk, and because it stifles you creatively. You don't have the energy you had creatively to do it. So what's going to happen is we're now building a team that will allow us to do that once it sort of gets into production.
What are you most excited about this project?
Two things. One is that it is a brand new thing that's happening.
Yeah.
The virtual aspect of Sanctuary is probably the most exciting thing to me. You are completely unfettered. And we have a group called Anthem who did the vis effects for Tin Man.
Yeah.
And the head of Anthem, Lee Wilson, has been over here probably 10 times now. We're talking about the scripts, and I'll say, I'd like to do this, and I want to move like this. And he goes, okay. And then we can do this. And my scope is like this. There's the end wall, and this is how I'm going to move the camera. And he grabs his hand and goes, like this, and pulls it over here. And he goes, okay, now drop that down there, and now you got a ceiling that says hi, and you're going, oh yeah.
That's right, it's virtual.
I described a shot the other day where there was a city map behind somebody. And I said, okay, we're going to start here. And Lee was sort of just out of my eye line. And I said, we're going to start here, and we're going to push into his face. He's going to start to look at the city map, and then he's going to, it's a sort of a Google Maps kind of thing. So it's that kind of satellite look. And I said, then he turns away and walks away, and then the camera goes forward, and then it drops in, and you see that it's heading towards City Hall in there, and then it drops down onto the sidewalk of City Hall. And now our character walks by and walks into, and that's
in one shot.
What you can do when you're virtual, And you can't do it in a world that's just sci-fi, because you've just defied sort of a lot of rules that you can't do in there. But in a virtual set, you can do that. So that for me is what's interesting.
Wasn't there something else too, or was?
Right. The other thing is with what we're doing right now. Having as much input as I do is a really important thing to me, because Stargate, like I said, they were so good to me as a supervising producer and as a creative consultant and all those kind of things. I always had input. Now it's not it's expected right now. I have to give input now. And if I didn't give the input, then the show wouldn't be what it is. In Stargate, the input I had would sort of, I was hoping it would move it up just a little bit and things like this, or give me a chance to do something as a director. Here, the input is changing the course of where you're going. And that's something that I had the opportunity to do at Stargate, but honestly didn't have the time. And truthfully, it wasn't my position to do that kind of stuff. I wasn't, navigating those kind of waters. But here, it's making wholesale changes in the direction the show is going, and that's an interesting thing to me right now. I'm looking forward to it.